My kitchen cupboard is a mess of bowls that don't stack. So today I'm attempting a set of nesting mixing bowls. But if I don't get the sizing right, I'll be left with a bigger pile of orphans. I'm using 2 kilos, 2.5 kilos and 3 kilos of clay. But I'm going to make the middle size bowl here, so I'm using 2.5 kilos of clay. So I center the clay. And now I flatten the clay to a diameter of about 15 centimeters. Now I push down into the clay, leaving just a little under 20 mil. I want to leave enough clay down there to trim a generous foot ring. And now I open out into a bowl shape. So the base that I'm creating is slightly curved. And as I scoop the clay out, the walls start to form. Now I can pull up the walls. As I pull up the walls, I'm starting to bring the rim outwards, so I'm aiming for a V shape. I'm keeping the rim a little thicker because now I'm going to shape the bowl. I'm creating that rounded mixing bowl shape, and I'm going to start to stretch the rim out. So this is where I'm creating the volume. So I'm pushing and stretching from the inside and supporting from the outside. You can use the rib on the inside or the outside, whatever's most comfortable. I tend to use a sponge on the inside and a rib on the outside controlling the shape. I trim around the foot. And then I smooth the rim with a chamois. This gives me a gently rounded rim. And now I'm ready to form the pourer. I use 2 fingers to hold the rim and 2 fingers to stretch out the pourer. As the clay dries, the rim will try and return to its rounded state. So if I can remember, I'll come back and revisit that spout shape. So now I can wire through. I take a measurement just so I can check that the larger and smaller bowls are going to be sized correctly. And now I can set aside to dry. So I'll just zip through the larger bowl and point out a couple of things. If 3 kilos is too large a piece of clay to center, you could divide it up and center in 2 parts. Leave extra clay in the base. This will really help as you start to stretch out the walls into that beautiful big bowl shape. Bring the walls up taller than the final height. As you start to stretch the clay out into that bowl shape, the walls are going to drop in height. Support the outside of the bowl as you shape, and only shape once you've got the height. It's tricky to bring the walls up once you've started shaping. Once the bowls are leather hard, I'm ready to trim. So I upend the bowl and center. Now it's worth remembering that the foot won't be exactly above the rim, and that's because we made a spout. So I'm making sure that the foot is centered because that's the part I want to trim. I just check that the foot is really centered by using a pin tool. And I fasten with clay lugs. Once the pot's secure, I start to trim the foot. I trim downwards to define that outer foot. Now my foot ring is going to be a little over 1 centimeter. So there's quite a bit to trim away. And I trim to make sure that the foot ring works with the curve of the bowl. There's a bit of a change of direction where the curve meets the foot ring. And I smooth that outer curve. I trim the inside of the foot ring. I cut away concentric circles, like clay channels, starting from the center and radiating out to the inner edge of the foot ring. And then using the flat edge of the trimmer, I trim across the peaks of those ridges. This is a quick, controlled way of removing clay. If you enjoy our videos, remember to subscribe, comment, and of course like. It's always really encouraging. I continue until I've removed the clay from the inside of the foot ring. And that's it. I remove the lugs of clay and check to make sure that it looks okay right way up. Once fully dry, I bisque fire. And at this stage they stack. Although if I were to do it again, I'd make the inner bowl a little smaller in diameter. It's a little bit snug. And so when I make the worksheet, I'm just going to adjust the sizes slightly so there's a little bit more wriggle room. And that reminds me, there's a worksheet that goes with this project. It's more a starting point for the weights and dimensions. Alright, so to the glazing. I start by pouring glaze on the inside of the bowl. I gently rotate it and then pour out using the spout. Give it a bit of a clean up around the edge, and then holding on to that generous foot ring, I dip the rim. But of course, if you'd rather a completely glazed bowl, dunk the whole thing. For me, this method of glazing works because I don't have to have a huge bucket of glaze in my small studio. And I love the contrast between the white glaze and the raw finished clay. They don't all fit in my little kiln together, so I glaze them in batches with other things. And I fire the bowls. And these are what I had in mind. As I mentioned, I would adjust the sizing slightly to have a little more room between the sizes. So, my new mixing bowls. They've definitely earned a place in my cupboard. For another large bowl project, why not go back to our beginning for our large bowl video? It's got some great pointers for beginner bowl makers. And, as always, happy potting.